Hi, my name is Deborah Anderson. I think a lot of people now know me as the crazy dog lady who put a live video on Facebook while out walking the dogs, aimed at teachers, classroom assistants, pleading with them to come along to the Tourette Alliance's first annual conference so that they could learn more about Tourette syndrome, so that they could spot the signs, so that they could help our children. And last seen, this had over 15,000 views, and I am absolutely delighted that I got the word out there. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about
This
myself.
is just something I read and I just felt that it was so fitting. It's called Promise to My Child. For as long as I live, I will always be your parent first and your friend second. I will stalk you, flip out on you, lecture you, drive you insane, be your worst nightmare, and hunt you down like a bloodhound when I have to, because I love you. When you understand that, I will know you have become a responsible adult. You will never find anyone else in your life who loves, prays, cares, and worries more about you than I do. If you don't mutter under your breath, I hate you, at least once in your life, I'm not doing my job properly. So this is the story of my beautiful baby boy, Ross, born on the 17th of October 1988. Just absolutely perfect. It's not Ross's story, it's Ross's story from my point of view. One day, Ross will tell his own story. Ross was just an amazing child. He was beautiful, he was sporty, he was happy, he was outgoing, he was popular, he was musical, he was so talented, he was very academic, very clever at school. He never had any behavioural issues going through school. Everybody loved him. He was our golden boy. Looking back, we can see now that there were signs from a very early age that Ross had Tourette syndrome. We can look at videos of him when he was 4 and we can see the eye blinking. You can hear the sniffing, the throat clearing, the little neck twitch to the side, the little face grimaces that are all tics, vocal and motor tics. But we didn't know that. We'd never heard of Tourette syndrome. His teachers had never heard of Tourette syndrome. They might say to us, Ross is sniffing a lot. You know, does he have a cold? We can't get him to blow his nose and use tissues. Ross is blinking a lot. Does he have a problem with his eyes? Ross is making funny little noises in his throat. Does he have a sore throat? Ross showed little signs of anxiety too when he went to friends' houses. He didn't like to eat there. He wanted to come home to have his food. He preferred to have his friends at our house than go to their house, even though he was so outgoing and sociable. We can see all this now. We'd never heard of Tourette syndrome. We'd never heard of associated disorders. We just thought all was well. But eventually, all those little signs started to come together to make us realise that there was something underlying, and that we possibly needed to get to the bottom of it. So we went to see our doctor and she referred us to a paediatrician. Paediatrician talked to Ross. He talked to myself. Ross was 11 at the time. He examined Ross and he said to us, I'll send for you again. So off we went. And he did send for us again 12 months later. I know now that for a diagnosis for Tourette syndrome, you need to have had motor tics and vocal tics seem to be present for at least a year. We know that Ross's had been present for many years, but obviously his paediatrician didn't have evidence of that. We didn't think to bring along videos of Ross. he would have just had to take our word for it. He had to see that for himself. And he did. And then Ross became a teenager. He was a very normal teenager. He had lots of friends. He was doing really well at school. He was very popular still. He fell in love. He had a really lovely girlfriend. He liked to use the internet. He liked to go on the computer. He played sport. He played music. He was not a difficult teenager by any stretch of the imagination. But the teenage years are difficult for anyone. Suddenly you get to a point where you want to be independent, but your parents aren't ready to let you to be independent, where what your peers think of you is so much more important than what your parents think of you, where you feel different, even if you don't have something like Tourette syndrome that makes you already a little bit more different. And I wish I had known that OCD, particularly when it's an associate condition of Tourette syndrome, is not about washing your hands and having to have things in order. It can be about intrusive thoughts. It can be about feeling unsafe. And I wish I'd known about anxiety and that it was associated with Tourette syndrome. I wish I'd known to look out for the signs of these and to get help sooner, so that my son had the strategies in place to help him with those in the early stages, because that would have made such a huge difference. It is so important to keep those lines of communication open with your teenagers. I got very anxious about Ross's behaviour. I felt he was very secretive. He wasn't telling me things. He was talking to people online, and I was concerned about how he was withdrawing from myself particularly, and I felt from our family, although my husband did a much better job at that stage of keeping the lines of communication open and keeping that balance between being a parent and letting Ross have his independence, and that was so important. This is when I completely screwed up. I wanted to know what Ross was saying to people online, so I did the unthinkable, and I went onto his computer. I looked at his messages. I was very frightened by his messages because I could see he was in a very dark place, and he was talking to people who were also in a very dark place. And because of that, I signed on as him, although I didn't pretend to be him. I told them who I was, and I basically ranted and raved at all these people who were talking to my son, who were, I felt, taking him away from me. And he was absolutely furious whenever he found out, and rightly so. And that took our relationship to a place where it may never have recovered from. It did, but I could have destroyed it completely. So, as unknown to us, Ross had OCD and anxiety. He became obsessive about his relationship with his girlfriend, and he became very anxious if she was away from him. She became his safe place. Can you imagine the strain that puts on your relationship if you're a 17-year-old girl, to have all that pressure on you? And not surprisingly, because of other circumstances, it all became too much for her, and she realised that she had to end her relationship for her own safety and for Ross's safety as well. And in doing that, which was so totally the right thing to do, she took away Ross's safe place. And she had to. And when he lost that safe place, he hit rock bottom. And I got a phone call from him. I was at work half an hour's drive away. My husband was, I think, out of the country at work. I got a phone call to say, Mum, I can't do this anymore. I can't live anymore. And I had to get my 15-year-old son to go find his brother. I had to tell him that his brother's life is in danger and that he needed to keep him safe until I got home. And he did, for which I'm so very thankful. And we had to start picking up the pieces. We then realised how serious things were. Thankfully, my husband's relationship with Ross was still in place, and he was amazing. And he was able to get Ross an emergency assessment. We didn't want Ross to have to be admitted into hospital. We wanted him treated at home. And that relationship between him and my husband made it possible for that to happen. And we did. We got Ross treatment. He needed psychiatric help. He needed cognitive behaviour therapy. And he did need to go on medication. Ross couldn't leave his bedroom for a long time, and so he couldn't go to school. He was on track to get all A's at A level. He was a very bright student, and the school really did their best to support him. They offered to give him home tuition. They tried to put in all the support that they could, but he just wasn't in a place. We realised that now. The school was so unimportant at that time. His education was not important. His mental health was what was important. And my big fear was he was no longer at school. He wasn't at work. It was like he didn't exist. And I started looking at young homeless people on the streets and thinking, that could be Ross. If he doesn't exist outside our home and anything happens to us in our home, that could be him. He could be one of those people living on the streets that is invisible. And it broke my heart looking at them, and it broke my heart to think that that could be my son. And so I realised that I needed to apply for benefits for him. He certainly wasn't in a position to apply for benefits himself. It's quite a maze. Or, do you apply for ESA, DLA, PIP? There are all these letters, and you're thinking, I don't know what they mean. I don't know how to apply for them. I don't know what we need to tell them. So there was no way he was going to be able to do that. But I knew that I needed to do it for him, because if the government were going to be paying out money to him, they would know he existed, and that would keep him visible. So you can go online to the government website, which is what I did, look at the benefits available, look at the criteria and apply. Or if you're not in a place to be able to do that, go into the DHSS and don't feel like you're begging. Go in with your held head high. You are caring for your child, or you're caring for yourself. And you're important and you're entitled. So do not feel guilty. Hold your head up high, and if you are talking to someone who is not understanding and who is not respectful, you ask to speak to someone else, because you deserve it and you deserve better, and so does your child. This is something else that is so important. There is quite a high percentage of young people with Tourette syndrome who will go on to have mental health problems, even though Tourette syndrome is neurological, but obviously it's to do with the brain, so you can understand why it may cause mental health problems. But the majority will not be as severe as Ross. He is at one end of the spectrum, and most of you will never have to deal with the severity of issues that we've had to deal with him. But it's very important to understand that once your child becomes an adult at 18, you no longer have to be kept informed of their care, of their treatment, of the help that they might even need at home. So it is so important for you to keep those lines of communication open with your child, so that, as in Ross's case, he said yes, he wanted us to be involved, he wanted us to know, he wanted us to come in at the end of his sessions and to be told how we could help. And another thing that is extremely important is to find a professional who can be a constant in the treatment of your young person, because you'll find, staff changes, and you need someone that you can both relate to and who will be that constant person that you can go to if there are any issues. With us, it has been, we eventually got an amazing community psychiatric nurse, Melissa, she has been a rock for both Ross and myself and my family, and she just relates so well to him, and she listens to me, and she feeds back information that we give her, as well as feeding information to us. So we know that Ross's recovery is going to be something that is ongoing. We did get him to the point where he was with treatment and support. He went back to college. He did absolutely amazingly, and he got accepted to Leeds University. So, currently there isn't a cure for Ross's OCD or his anxiety. They are conditions that can be managed, but when he has a relapse, then it takes a long time to get him back to the point of being able to live a fairly normal life again. And that may be how his life will continue. We don't know. We just have to wait and see. But is it true that where there's life, there's hope? Absolutely. We have our son with us. We can hug him. We can tell him we love him. We can support him. We can help him get well again, even if he relapses again. It's, we just appreciate so much that we still have him. And for me, there is huge hope in Tourette Alliance, because this strain on us at times has been incredible, and we didn't know where to turn to. We didn't know where to go for support. And now with Tourette Alliance, no one need feel like that again. They can come and talk to us. They can talk to other people who've been through the same. We can hopefully point them in the right direction to get help. And it's so important as a carer to look after yourself, not just the person you're caring for. It does put a strain on you. It puts a strain on your own mental health, and there are organisations out there that can help you, and you do need to call on them if things get too much. Ross is an amazing person. He's definitely an animal whisperer. He and I both help out with rescue, and these two little kittens came to us as ferals. Ross was the only one that they would let near them, and he literally had them eating out of his hand. I'm so proud of him. So remember, you don't have to do this alone. Tourette Alliance are here for you. And if you yourself are struggling and feel you need some help, these are the organisations that I was saying that they can help give you support with your own mental health if it puts a strain on that. Life's good, and it's definitely worth holding on to.